federal routing boundaries were stalled by the government, and they're coming back for review. And I have a personal opinion on what's best for the city, but I think more so what's best for the city. There's sort of partisan implications at a federal level. So I'm just wondering if other people are commenting on that on the second round. Does everybody know what I'm talking about roughly? But my preference is not to comment, but if other people are commenting, I'm going to comment too. So.
Well, I don't think that's really our business is in there. I think we should stay out of it. We're only going to hurt ourselves if we get involved.
Okay, so that's to say no one's commenting on it.
They don't get involved in our stuff, telling us where our boundaries should be.
Okay. So that's to say no one's commenting on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are some amendments to the, you want to say what those are, Councillor Bryce?
I sure can. The first one is the addition of item CP 13-12 and the tabling of delegation 13-41 and the report CR 13-43.
That's the tabling of the debt limit and future considerations report.
Right, and the delegation that goes with that.
Right. A seconder for that, please.
Second that, Your Worship.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Adoption of the minutes, please.
I'll move the minutes as recorded by the clerk's office.
A seconder for that, please.
Second.
Councillor Hinks. Any errors or omissions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move to advertised bylaws and related reports. We have a delegation, Ms. Judith Verzik. Is Judith Verzik here? Apparently she is not here. Judith Verzik. Judith Verzik. I don't think she's here, so perhaps we can have a receive and file on her communication.
Your Worship, I'll move receive and file on the communication provided by I guess it was by D 1337.
Okay, second for that, please.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. This is a delegation to report 37. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Your Worship. On behalf of Planning Commission, I'm going to bring forward an application for a contract zone approval. This is a proposed temporary parking lot in the downtown. The location is 1755 Hamilton Street. Background on this is that the applicant is proposing a temporary parking lot with 56 stalls on the 1755. This is a current vacant area. People will remember that there was some structures that were tore down a while back. We do not normally allow surface parking in the downtown. This does not go for the plan. You will note that the previous delegation of which we received the report represents the downtown bid, and they are supporting this because it is a temporary basis and because this would alleviate some of the concerns from both construction and parking issues that we're having in the downtown. They are willing to support this, and Planning Commission was willing to support this because of the temporary nature of which we have. And you will note that this is related to a report that we will have a little bit later on in terms of a large structure going on one block away. So Planning Commission is looking for concurrence on this, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Any comments or questions on the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
I'll just, if I could, I'll just make one more comment. I'll close debate.
Close debate on yourself. Okay.
Yeah, on myself. I just wanted to make sure that we understood that part of the process that's also gone here is that the proponent for this area, in fact, has actually submitted a plan right now, although it has not gone through our normal processes in terms of this is what it'll be and so on. They are giving every indication that they have a plan for this building and that it is a multi-use facility. And I would like you to just keep that in mind for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We move on to our next report. This is a communication from Ms. Carrie Moore, and since they're not a delegation, I believe. Need a motion?
I'll
on that?
move the communication.
Seconder for that?
Second it.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll move to Councilor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Worship. This is 1338, an application for a zoning bylaw amended PS to R1A, and the address is 2370 Elphinstone Street. The subject property is currently zoned public service, is proposed to be rezoned RA, which is residential older neighborhood, detached. Subject property is located within the cathedral area, and it is a consolidation of a lot X, which used to be a lane. The history here is that it never was a lane. Because of where it's located in relationship to Elphinstone and College Avenue, the lane was never operational. This has never been a park. This was just a lane. And so the idea now is to consolidate this into the adjacent property that's beside. The previous correspondence that you approved indicated that from that applicant's proposal that they see no problem with parking or access or anything like that. And of course, the administration has proposed this, and the Planning Commission has approved this. Concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councilor O'Donnell. Any comments or questions on this report? Councilor Fraser?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions for the administration here. I've had a chance to speak with Mr. Moore, the applicant. I'm just wondering, so this, I understand that this was a proposed lane that didn't happen because it was on Elphinstone Street, and that was too busy of a street to make into a lane. But it's also a service corridor, is that right? Or there's pipes underneath, is that right?
Mr. Carlston?
Excuse me, Your Worship, that is correct. So there'd be an easement in which they wouldn't be able to construct over this portion.
Okay. Supposing they were to move the pipes, like, is there options for them to actually do that if they were to pay to have the pipes?
Mr. Carlston?
Your Worship, that would be an option, but quite likely be very costly as well.
Okay. So I understand that this isn't park land, even though it's adjacent to a park. The impression I was given that his family's sort of been looking after it for a long time. Do we, like, does the city not look after something like this in the same way we would the adjacent park? The people that actually maintain it, do they see a distinction between it?
Mr. Carlston?
Your Worship, in these circumstances, sometimes it can go either way. Sometimes the adjacent resident sort of takes on an ownership or property maintenance status and uses the property, and other times the city clearly is responsible and manages that. So in these types of sort of remnant parcels that aren't actually park space, typically the city would take care of them, but sometimes residents tend to, and what happens in these situations is the residents pursue to purchase at some point, typically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we'll now move into some other delegations. This is for Somerset Fisher Community Plan Amendments, DE 13-38. Ryan Bender. Good afternoon, Mr. Bender. If you could identify yourself so as you represent. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions of members of council afterwards.
I represent myself. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Bender, and I'm here to support the application for Somerset. I was born and raised in Regina, and I'm currently in the last semester at the University of Regina, majoring in business admin. I also work at Remax Crown, and I own a number of rental properties throughout the city. From these experiences, I've seen the number of different obstacles that face Regina citizens in today's housing market. We all continue to talk about the high house prices, the housing shortage, the high rental rates, and how the city is going to maintain Regina's growth. However, we struggle to find a solution. This development is our opportunity to help solve not all, but some of these issues. I first heard about this project when I, along with some friends, attended the public information session put on by the city. After learning more about the project, we were very impressed because the project answered so many questions about the housing options that currently don't exist in the city. My friends and I had decided to do something about this, and we got approximately 500 support letters together, which we handed in the city a few months back during the RPC meeting. I am speaking on behalf of these people. This project makes more than enough sense from all angles, and we ask you to support this development to help move Regina forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bender, for your presentation. There may be questions. Just a moment, please, if you don't mind. Maybe members of council have questions of you. Councilor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Good evening. Simple question about the petition or the signatures of support.
Yep.
Why did people do that, please?
Well, basically, me and my friends, we went around the city. We told them about the different options, housing options that Somerset is going to offer. We said that obviously there's not enough supply. We need more supply here to meet the demand, and it made sense in all angles, like I had mentioned before.
So, Your Worship, there are a number of construction areas in the city. Mm-hmm. What differentiates this that would make people want to support it?
What differentiates this place?
Yep.
Well, quite honestly, from looking at the different reports and whatnot, it's obviously affordability. There are a number of different plans that I had read on that looked like you're getting your smaller lots for still a good quality home.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor O'Donnell. Councilor Bryce.
Thank you. I'm just wanting to know, do you have any financial interest in Somerset?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
Other than it's real estate, and I'm a real estate investor have rental properties.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. Thank you. You can return to the gallery now. We'll go to our next delegation. This is DE-39, James Perneau. Hope I've got that right. If not, I know you'll correct me. Please state your name, who you represent, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. There may be questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Your Worship, members of council, my name is James Perneau. I'm a senior planner with McElhaney Consulting. McElhaney is a multidisciplinary engineering firm with over 20 offices across Western Canada, including Saskatchewan. And we've been in business for over 100 years. I'm here representing the proponent of the Somerset project. This evening I will be highlighting some of the plan's best and most significant features that I hope you will take into consideration. I'll be followed by Mr. Bobby Poir, who is one of the owners of the Somerset project, who will be presenting as a separate delegation after me and speak to his commitment to this project. I'd like to start by simply stating that I'm really proud of this plan. It represents the culmination of a considerable amount of effort, not only from city staff, but the various sub-consultants that have worked on it, as well as stakeholders, all of whom have provided valuable input during the course of the plan's development. This is a plan that we have been working on with staff for over 4 years. During this time, we've undertaken a very intensive and thorough review of the plan and the issues and concerns that have been brought forward through the internal, interagency, stakeholder, and public engagement processes. There are a variety of factors we considered in the development of this plan. Firstly, the Somerset area is identified as residential development in Regina's official community plan. There are various supplemental studies and policies that further clarify the anticipated use of the Somerset lands as residential use. Our proposal is completely in line with existing council policy. The Somerset plan is merely a tool to implement the land use policies of the city that are already in place. Secondly, the Somerset neighborhood is effectively a completion of the Uplands and Kensington Greens neighborhoods, and Somerset will help create a more complete and sustainable community in this area of the city. Third and finally, the city can take advantage of the existing servicing infrastructure that has been specifically designed to help service this area. In recognition of the growing issues of housing availability and affordability, the city recently endorsed the findings and recommendations in a comprehensive housing strategy. The recommendations of the strategy included such measures, and I'll quote, "The creation of complete communities that accommodate a range of housing, provide a mix of land uses, and support transit." When we planned the Somerset neighborhood, we were sensitive to the growing problems of affordability and housing options facing the city. To address these challenges, the Somerset neighborhood was designed with a very broad range of housing types and forms to appeal to a wide range of family housing needs and budgets. Some of the strategies that we have utilized in Somerset to create affordability include the use of higher densities and smaller lot sizes that have been coupled with a highly efficient land use plan. Affordability is also achieved through the house design and construction approaches that concentrate density vertically rather than horizontally. Smaller housing footprints and smaller roof structures not only help to reduce the sprawl effect, but will also lead to lower construction costs and lower heating costs to future home owners. And to be clear, I want to say that affordable does not have to mean boring or repetitive house designs. With the Somerset Plan, I believe that the city has an opportunity to implement some of the recommendations in its comprehensive housing strategy. Our Somerset Plan is based on a vision. It's based on a vision of innovation and sustainability. It's about creating a neighborhood that's got character, a neighborhood that's complete. It's about creating a neighborhood that's sustainable and a neighborhood that's desirable. On the surface, having a variety of design requirements and policies to create a more visually appealing neighborhood or housing is a good thing. But the intent of these design requirements that we have in our plan goes deeper than that. I'll give you one example. Somerset design requirements allow for the placement of the garages to be either at the rear of the lot, off a back lane, or at the front of the house, but recessed from the front part of the dwelling. This allows the front porch element to become the dominant design element on the streetscape, and this opens up the public realm to social interaction, casual surveillance, and enhances the perception of public safety. These are measures that are designed to reconnect residents with their neighbors and neighbors with their neighborhood. Think of it in terms of sitting on your front porch on a pleasant Saturday afternoon, relaxing, while you greet your neighbors as they are out in front for a casual walk with their dog. But building a porch on the front of a house isn't anything new. The secret ingredient, I believe, is actually the arrangement of the interior living space and how that's coordinated with the front porch and even the front windows. This is what allows everything to work together, and this is what creates unique and livable neighborhoods. For Somerset, we challenged ourselves. We challenge ourselves to design a neighborhood to be innovative, complete, and sustainable. I'm confident that we have achieved these objectives and that Somerset will be a vibrant and dynamic new neighborhood in the city of Regina. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pruner. Are there any questions of the delegation at all? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thanks, Your Worship. Welcome. I want to make sure people understand, first of all, what we will be discussing later on, and it's not a concept plan, although you've introduced some of those notions, so just so that we understand. But I do want to give you a chance to talk about the area. So first and foremost, let's describe exactly where this was located in the city of Regina, please.
This is through the chair. To Councillor O'Donnell, Somerset is located in what's called the northwest sector of the city. It's located at the north end of the city's limit. The adjacent neighborhood would be the Kensington Green neighborhood to the south. The east portion of the site is bound by Winnipeg Street, which is a rural arterial road.
Thank you. Now, there is a railroad line that goes on one side of this, and Kensington would be to both the south and to the west of that. How are you looking at joining the neighborhoods?
Through the chair, again to Councillor O'Donnell, that's an excellent question. There is a CP rail. It's a spur line that services the Everaz industrial facility. We're looking at achieving connection to the Kensington Green neighborhood by a pedestrian connection that's located roughly in the middle of our site to connect up our major open space area with Kensington Green's major open space area. In addition to that, we're looking at a vehicular connection that would be located in the northwest corner of our site, which would be the northwest corner of the Kensington Green site as well. So there'd be a full pedestrian that's safely designed as well as a full vehicular connection.
Thank you. Your Worship, wondering a little bit about Winnipeg and traffic flows and so on. Was there any consideration given to how you would impact Winnipeg Street and what you might be able to do about that?
Again, through the chair to Councillor O'Donnell, the proponents have made it abundantly clear in some of the discussions, and I think also at the RPC meeting, that they're prepared to improve Winnipeg Street on their frontage, as well as work with city staff with respect to coordinating other additional efforts that would be off-site or to the south on Winnipeg Street to try to realize overall sort of network improvements. I understand the city staff is also looking at their own studies with respect to Winnipeg Street further to the south of the site.
Thank you very much. In this area, Your Worship, there was some thought given to some commercial corridor, which is not really part of the Uplands or Kensington area. Could you describe what you would like to do? And I'm going to describe it as the bottom corner there.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor O'Donnell. As a part of our complete community that we're proposing, we're looking at a small village commercial node that's located in the the southeast corner of the site. It's a portion of the site that is closest to the existing Uplands and Kensington Green neighborhood. And the thought being that by providing a small amount of village commercial, it would provide for commercial amenities, I'll use the word loosely, to an existing population that currently has nowhere to go. So we're trying to provide those sorts of things and facilities in close proximity to the population so that they're not having to make a lot of additional trips to deal with the daily needs they would have, a loaf of bread, a haircut, that sort of thing.
Good, thanks very much. So I'm going to be very direct with this question. Excuse me. So some of the correspondence we have received today in terms of this area and in terms of using affordability, basically people are wondering, I'm trying to be polite here, if in fact there is some, and I'm going to use a phrase, ghettoization here. In other words, because the housing may be lower cost, that we're forcing people to be in an area. Can I get you to respond to that comment, please?
Again, through the chair to Councillor O'Donnell. In terms of ghettoization, I tend to look at that as an area where everything is the same type of people, and normally you associate ghettoization with a poor people, but the same is true regardless of the income levels. With the Somerset plan, what we're proposing is a very broad range of housing types, from detached to attached to apartment, condo, even residential above commercial. That in itself creates a very diverse population of people living there. And I think with that, where you have, whether it be young families starting out with their first home, seniors downsizing, students, singles, mingles, whatever sort of group you want to call out, it provides for a very diverse community there. And I think that that's one of the keys to the Somerset neighborhood, is trying to provide a very diverse land use base to create a very vibrant community, rather than having all the same type of land use. That, by definition is sort of creating that type of effect. So we're looking at a very diverse and vibrant mix of people living there.
Thank you. And Your Worship, is there any park space planned here?
Yes, pardon me, through the chair, again to Councillor O'Donnell, we're proposing a 10-acre park space. It's going to be centrally located around the highest densities that we're proposing in the Somerset plan. It's also intended to serve as very much a social focus, if you will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. Just looking at the picture on your submission, it talks about raised intersection. What is a raised intersection?
Through the chair. We were exploring with city staff the idea of elevating the asphalt, or even doing a color or texture to the asphalt for the purpose of demarking a pedestrian crossing or a major intersection for traffic calming purposes. We looked at a number of different approaches, for example, small traffic circles. I think through discussions with staff, I think at this point we're looking at some form of stamped or raised asphalt just to provide a traffic calming, an indication to motorists that there is pedestrian crossings here. And it's amazing how just the noise in the tires tends to draw the attention of the driver to slow people down a little bit.
Okay. And is there any issue with snow removal with something like that?
Through the chair, excellent question as well. We're still working with staff with respect to how much of a raised elevation. The stamped concrete would effectively be almost the same elevation as the surrounding asphalt. So something like that probably will be the thing that we would have to look at, is the traffic calming tools. So we'll continue to work with staff to figure out what the most appropriate measure is from an operations standpoint. But clearly what we'd like to achieve here is some form of traffic calming, and this is the idea that we have at this stage, this conceptual stage.
Thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this development is in close proximity to both the upgrader and to FRAS. Are there concerns about the environment and health issues or anything like that?
Through the chair, the issue has been sort of looked at through the through staff. There have been a number of reports that have come forward as a part of the CCRL expansion. I've sort of summarized of the number of reports that have been brought forward from as far back as 2007. The conclusions of those reports and the various consultants and third-party consultants that looked at those reports had concluded that there isn't a level of risk that's not manageable. The city itself even engaged their own third-party consultant to look at a report that was provided to them through CCRL, and again, staff concluded with the third-party consultant that the Somerset site is not at any unacceptable level of risk. I'd also like to point out that Somerset is actually located further away from a great number of people that already live in the area. In fact, the closest point of Somerset, which is the southeast corner, is approximately 1 kilometer away from the fence line. And when you measure from the center of the central processing unit on CCRL, you're talking about a distance of about 1.9 kilometers from the closest point. We have commercial at the closest point, so the vast majority of the residents that would be coming to the Somerset neighborhood would be in excess of 2 kilometers from the central processing unit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. Well, welcome, and most of my questions have been asked. So I think I do have something, though, that I want to just touch on. We're applying for a plan to add this into the 235 population of the growth of the city. Do you see anything that would hamper the growth coming into adding it to the 235, whether it be environmental, construction-wise, road networks? Councillor Bryce talked about air quality. I mean, have you spoken with any of the people in Uplands already? Maybe you can talk on that for a second.
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Flagel. I personally don't see any challenges with respect to advancing this project as soon as possible. The commitment of the developer, and Mr. Parr will talk to that a little bit more just after me, is that they want to get started as soon as they possibly can. And as soon as Council sees fit to grant the necessary approvals and grant it, we're at an OCP amendment stage, so we still have the neighborhood concept plan to look at in further detail and bring back to council. So on that front, no, I don't see any technical challenges. I think these are all things that we've looked at. We've spent 4 years analyzing, studying. We've had our own people looking at things with respect to risk and whatnot. The city's engaged their own consultants, as well as a host of other consultants that have looked at various things in the area. In terms of talking to residents in the Uplands Kensington Green area, we had a public information meeting in late November of last year, and I talked to a number of people, and the vast majority of people that I did talk to, and I believe that the results sort of speak for themselves, indicate that there was a very strong level of support for the area developing, providing some services that aren't currently there. The issue of air quality, for example, was not raised at that public information meeting, and let's say that's not talked about, but it didn't come up at that particular information meeting. Most of the feedback that I received from the public was more along the lines of, when can I get one? How fast is this going to come along? It was more along the lines of timing. When can we get into this area?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that I was just wondering about is, I lost my train of thought, but I'll leave it at that for now. But as far as anything else that you'd like to let us know about, because it's been a very contentious issue in terms of the health and safety, and yet there's 6,000 people living in Uplands that are closer from what you're telling me. Is there anything that the city can look at or can do to maybe alleviate some of the concerns?
Again, through the chair to Councillor Flagel. One of the things that I believe Bobby would have been mentioning it, but I'll answer it here because it is a very good question. One of the things that, as the developers had agreed to, was to provide or register a caveat on title. And that caveat would serve the purpose of advising all future purchasers of residential units within the Somerset plan, advising them of the presence of industrial uses in close proximity to their units. So I don't believe such a caveat exists in this particular area currently. I have heard of another one in another area of the city, but as far as I'm aware, this is the first one. And hopefully that will provide the necessary tool to educate the future purchasers and help manage some of the potential complaints that might come, as I know that there may be a few or there are some in the area already.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The water, sewer, fire hydrants, water pressure, you realize that's about 1.5 years away from coming to that area? I'm assuming you're aware of that.
Through the chair, yes, we are aware. The water and sanitary sewer is an ongoing capital project. It's scheduled, as far as I understand from talking to staff, to be complete sometime next year. For the purpose of our project, we are at kind of the beginning or step one of the process, and it's going to take us enough time to get to the detailed design of even the first phase.
So if this was to be approved, Mr. Mayor, it would fit within a timeline that you're comfortable with?
Through the chair, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Young?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about bus routes for schools. The schools that serve that area are in the uplands. So what would be the route that school buses would take?
Through the chair to Councillor Young, we suggested a proposed bus route in the neighborhood concept plan that's presently with staff. Until the connections are made with the, I guess that ultimate build out, we anticipate that the bus route could either go up Winnipeg Street, do a loop around and come back down, cross into 12th Avenue, or alternatively, it could do a loop through Somerset and loop down into the new connection through the future Kensington Green. So in terms of interim and ultimate, I'm not too sure how that will work, but we have made provision for a collector road that would be sufficient to handle a bus route. We've also put our highest densities there to help support the transit through the sufficient amount of riders.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Any other questions? Councillor Findura.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Mr. Proof. I've got one question. As you designing the houses and you're building, is there any thought through Your Worship on barrier-free rebuilding houses? I mean, we're looking at something that is wheelchair accessible. You looked at what that would cost. How many can you put together in that area, to Your Worship?
Through the chair to Councillor Findura, an excellent question. It's typically when we design houses like that, we try to design the plates to be convertible. That is, that they can accommodate conversions relatively readily. Simple things like ensuring there's an electrical outlet plug on the outside, so somebody can get up a staircase with a little ramp chair, things like that. So that's something that we can definitely look at when we get into the details of the neighborhood concept plan. All of these features will be built into a set of architectural design guidelines that will also be registered on title, in addition to the caveat on title advising of industrial uses in the area.
Thank you. One more. Councillor Young mentioned about transit, talking about conventional and paratransit and going into the area. When you're building roads, you look at accommodating a bus going through Somerset. Has that been looked at?
Through the chair, again to Councillor Findura, absolutely. We've got a major network system in our road design that will accommodate not only smaller buses, community buses, but also the full standard bus and emergency vehicles, and that would serve the main bus route. Again, the type of housing which would be probably more particularly geared towards seniors, for example, or people with mobility issues, would be directly on those routes. So the types of housing that would be most appropriate are located on those routes.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. No other questions of the delegation. Thank you, Mr. Pernew, for your patience in answering questions. You can return to the gallery now.
Thank you.
Next delegation is D 13-40, Bobby Pawar. If you could identify yourself, tell us who you represent. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards. And welcome to City Council.
My name is Bobby Power, and I'm representing Earth King Investments and the Somerset project. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Bobby Power, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to convey our thoughts as to our development in Somerset and all the positive things it can offer the City of Regina. I have a master's degree in business strategic management and work full-time in the development industry throughout Western Canada. For the past 6 years, I, along with my colleagues, have had the privilege of working on a variety of projects in Saskatchewan, with the majority of my time being spent here in Regina. We currently own and operate businesses in Regina and have always enjoyed an excellent relationship with the people we deal with. And we've been very fortunate to develop a number of long-standing relationships and friendships. From these experiences, we have learned to gauge the community and its needs in a more detailed way. So when we started the process of Somerset over 4 years ago, we believed that a project such as this could bring about numerous positive and innovative changes while addressing some long-standing needs in the area of housing for the city. We believe Somerset is dynamic, progressive, safe, sustainable, affordable, and very logical. These are not only my words, but terms that used by residents we have heard from in the public information sessions, supporters we've heard from at the RPC meeting, and from small business owners and community advocates that have seen and understand our vision and plan for Somerset. During the course of developing our plan, we engaged on our own initiative with many stakeholders, agencies, individuals, such as Larry House from RROC and formerly known as RITA, as well as Saskatchewan Housing Corp., just to mention a few. I would also like to acknowledge city staff and administration who have diligently worked with us to provide their expertise and guidance to help craft a plan that we are extremely proud of. People are coming to Regina for reasons such as the city's strong economic market, excellent educational opportunities, and social and recreational opportunities. Regina is being recognized nationally and internationally as a premier place to live. Housing availability has a huge impact on housing affordability. This has caused affordability and availability to become issues for residents and newcomers to the city. To handle this growth pressure, building out a neighborhood like Somerset every year just to keep pace with the current rate of population growth is now a reality. With the Somerset neighborhood plan, the city has an opportunity to help manage growth and housing issues. And I just wanted to touch on something through your worship to what Councillor O'Donnell had mentioned earlier.
You'll need to just stick with your script, and you'll
Okay.
have questions afterwards from members of council for that,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look for questions.
Thank you for your patience. It's a procedural issue, so I really can't have you stray from the text. I apologize for that. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Good evening. Your Worship, I'm going to give the delegation a chance to respond to some of the questions I previously asked, but also I'll start with this one, though. If you were to have a plan that was approved at some point in time, how many people do you perceive to live in the area of Somerset?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor O'Donnell. Currently, we're estimating with the concept plan that we have in front of city staff, which has not been passed, we're looking between 3,000 and 3,500 people.
Okay, thank you. When you bought the land originally, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, if I remember from the discussion of Planning Commission, were you under the understanding that that land was designated for residential?
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt about that.
Yep.
Okay. So you have a plan that you're contemplating in terms of the type of housing, and the word affordable comes in here. And so you heard me ask the previous delegation about the type of development it might be, and I'll let you respond to what it is that you would see for your neighborhood and how that would be.
Thank you. And through your worship to Councillor O'Donnell, I think James had mentioned quite a few of the things that I wanted to speak to, but I wanted to reiterate one fact that just because you can build something affordable doesn't mean it's an inferior product, nor is it going to be cheap. I think we throw that word affordable around quite a bit. However, we're saying that we can build a better product that has a lot of different aspects to it for a more reasonable price. And as James had mentioned earlier, first-time homebuyers, singles, students, seniors, this is what we envisioned. But in addition to that, as a developer, we assume that, and we know that if this was to go forward, we'd be building this in phases. So after phase one, or development of phase one, if it wasn't done to a certain standard, I don't think we could get to phase two. So that's the way we envision and we see as a safeguard for the consumer.
Okay, thanks very much. I want to just ask a little bit about the interface between the Kensington area and your area. So I heard from the previous delegation about a road and a walkable easement area. Can you confirm?
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. And just to add a little bit more to that, working with city staff and our neighbor, we had envisioned obviously different approaches, and we've basically honed it to one pedestrian ped walkway that James had mentioned earlier, which would also allow emergency vehicles to access if need be, along with another road in the northwest sector, which would connect Kensington and ourselves. And I would add that I think, going through the planning process of the city over the last few years, it's a nice fit because now it'll connect Kensington, Uplands, and Somerset in a more functional way. So that's what we envisioned. That's what we planned for.
Thank you very much. So you're aware of the location and the discussion that we've had both here and previously in terms of your relationship with CCRL. So in terms of a caveat being placed on each of the properties, give me your response to that, your commitment and your response, please.
Absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor O'Donnell, we have no issue with registering a caveat on title, and we never have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you very much. I'll talk again against the, not against, but about the upgrader and Evraz Place, or not Evraz Place, but Evraz, the proximity to it. Have you done environmental testing with the land? What was the land used before for, and do you have any concerns about the health issues that people have brought up? Through your worship.
Through your worship to Councillor Bryce. Yes, we did thorough environmental studies, and along with the studies that were done through the city, to answer your first question, I believe. And moving forward from that, there is a buffer area, and we honor that. And we've taken every safeguard possible. And no, we don't believe that there is any issue, and I don't think that anything that has been brought to us has shown that. And if there had been, we would have already worked with the city staff to tackle that issue.
Thank you. Was this used as farmland prior?
I believe it was.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Other questions? Councillor Flegel.
Thanks, and thanks for coming forward with this. The open house that was done back in November, that's when you and I first met. Was there any discussion, did people come up to you in the Uplands area and ask you about air quality? What was the big thing that they talked about?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Flegel, nobody actually spoke to me personally or anyone that I know from the Somerset team about air quality or anything of that nature. The issues that we talked about were Winnipeg Street and how there's a dust issue there, but paving that would eliminate that. In addition to that, as James had mentioned, we did have quite a few inquiries from people who wanted to purchase a possible unit in Somerset. And furthermore, just getting more information about what the neighborhoods would look like is basically what most of the questions were about.
Thank you. On another note, Your Honor, Mr. Mayor, I listened to your little discussion outside with the reporter, and it seems there's a misconception about the distance of your location to the co-op. And I know James talked about it real briefly, but could you just kind of give what her perception of how close this actually was?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Flegel, I think that a lot of times, it's very difficult for someone, especially, and I don't want to say in the media only, but not to understand the full culpability of a report. It seems like a lot of people are assuming that no one lives around this CCRL refinery, when in fact, if you were to draw a big circle around it, there's almost 15,000 people in a very close vicinity. The second part of your question would be that we measured from the center point of the CCRL, where the CCRL themselves had done most of their studies, even for the expansion and the upgrade for their own facility, and we are over 2 kilometers away. So I don't know where that other number has been coming from.
If I could, I think the reporter was saying less than 1 kilometer.
That's correct.
Is what they were hearing.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay.
In addition to that, Councillor Flegel, they had not contacted the city for that information. I don't know where that information came from.
Okay. And I'm going to, if I could, Mr. Mayor, you're comfortable with the timeline that if this was to go forward? Because we're just talking about, again, adding this to the 235. Are you comfortable with this timeline?
Through His Worship, to Councillor Flagel, yes, I mean, we are here at the OCP stage, and we understand that we do have a concept plan, but that will take some time to enhance and make better, and we have to work with, whatever's possible, and next year that works with us, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Any other questions? I have one, and if I might just, you have spoken or communicated with and saw references for CCRL and AVRA's concerns. Have you had any communication with the Arm of Sherwood on this development? If you have, can you just explain what you went through?
Sure. With Your Worship, we basically had instigated our own conversations with the Arm of Sherwood through written and oral means, and I kind of find it a little bit surprising because the conversations that we had with their planner were all very positive. They've indicated to us through email and on the phone that they liked a lot of aspects of our plan. They also said that they have their own political issues, which we are not privy to. However, we had worked with them, with their planner on this file, and I can honestly say that, through what he's written to us and through our communications, it seemed like they really liked the plan. So we're a little bit taken aside as to what their current thought process is on Somerset.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Any other questions? You can return to the gallery and we'll go to our next delegation. Thank you very much. Next delegation, and draw members of council to a new report. It was circulated to you. This would be from Paul Yurtas and Marlene McFarland. Please come forward. If you could identify yourself, who you represent. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. I would ask that you do stick with the text that's been provided.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Paula Jurdas, and I'm also speaking on behalf of Marlene McFarland, who happened to move to, go to Calgary, so she wasn't here to be here today. I was appalled that the Regina City Council is considering a new subdivision, Somerset, located between Evraz and the refinery. I am chemically sensitive, and I find it unacceptable for health reasons to locate residential areas downwind from major industries. People living in several Regina neighborhoods are already at health risk from being downwind from one or both of these industries, and these would include areas such as Upland, Glencairn Village, and anything kind of in that general area. I understand that the Regina Capel Health Region, the Saskatchewan Departments of Health and Environment are all opposed to this development, but the proposal for Somerset neighborhoods is still coming to Council. I ask Council not to approve the development of the subdivision. In terms of pollution, both industries have to declare the pollutants they release, mostly in air, under the National Pollutants Release Inventory. I looked at the 2010 data from the refinery. And certainly, before the expansion of the refinery was expelling 4 chemicals of concern higher than acceptable levels. These include hydrogen sulfide, benzene, toluene, and I believe the other one was particulate matter. The level of emissions were forecasted to significantly increase after the refinery expansion was completed, and I believe I haven't looked at all the data. I was kind of short-timed on this. Several of the substances emitted, such as benzene, are now considered toxic at every level. There is no threshold below which they are non-toxic. There is also universal consensus that endocrine disruption occurs and that this puts in question all the current regulatory systems. And that would mean from guidelines, health guidelines to, water quality, air quality guidelines, everything. For the 2012-13 NPRI, 346 substances have to be declared, and several of them were actually on the list for Regina, the refinery. I mostly concentrate on the refinery. I just didn't have time for everything. A quick look will show you that many extremely toxic pollutants are released in the tens of tons every year, such as 1,2,4-trimethylbenzene, 28 tons, benzene, 14 tons, ethylbenzene, 17 tons, xylene, 96 tons, hydrogen sulfide, 37 tons, etc. That just gives you an idea of how much pollution is coming out of that stack. Prior to 2007, Pollution Watch was kind of hired or co-keeper of this information from Environment Canada and them, and they used to keep tabs on the pollution levels. Their last data is 2006, because as of 2007, everything moved to the NPRI. Their tables are slightly different, but I pulled out some things from the 2006 table which were not present in the NPRI, and that would include the total volatile organic compounds, sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, and particulate matter. Particulate matter is very important to health. Anything below 10 microns can penetrate inside the lungs. And below 2.5 microns, not only it remains in the lungs, but it also penetrates right to the blood vessel and can thicken up the blood with serious consequences on people who have heart problems. The Pollution Watch table also links to chemical profiles and negative health effects. The substances linked in the text above, well, kind of underlined here, but if you have an online version, you'll have the link. You'll find serious health effects such as the following for ethyl benzene, which has recognized health effects of being a carcinogen and is suspected cardiovascular or blood toxicant, developmental toxicant, endocrine toxicant, gastrointestinal or liver toxicant, kidney, neurotoxicant, reproductive toxicant, respiratory, and skin or sense organ toxicant. And hydrogen sulfide, which is also released in large quantities, is a suspected cardiovascular or blood toxicant, neurotoxicant, reproductive, and respiratory toxicant. These charts also should indicate to you, because on the right-hand side you have the international or U.S. or whatever agencies that have determined these particular, these things were toxicants in some way. So how difficult it is to get a substance registered as a recognized toxins. Even with a lot of animal and human evidence of negative health effects, as demonstrated by the agencies recognizing these chemicals as toxins, the polluting industry's influence keeps them out of the recognized toxin category. Far from being contained, these pollutants continue to be released by the refinery on a regular basis. The refinery also suffers many excursions, which means pollution events with much higher concentration releases of various pollutants. Several people are sickened currently from these releases and have to go to emergency for relief. Unfortunately, in spite of the 24-hour Provincial Poison Center, one patient was ridiculed and threatened with being moved to the mental ward rather than giving the oxygen she needed. In a separate incident, she phoned the Provincial Poison Center, who told her to lie down with a cold compress on her head in the dark. While this works for migraines caused by perhaps a food allergy or something, it certainly is not an appropriate answer to a toxic exposure, and it could have caused her death. It is obvious that our healthcare system is quite oblivious to pollution issues. I've been working on that for years. As a society, we ignore pollution issues because they get in the way of development. We need trained medical personnel in the field of occupational health and toxicology to be able to counsel people appropriately. So in spite, again, of the Regina-Capel Health Region and the Saskatchewan Department of Health are opposed to this development in spite of the fact that they know so little about it. As to Saskatchewan environment, the regular measurements of pollution are limited by the Clean Air Act, which only requires the measurement of very few pollutants, including hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide. You can look at Appendix 1 to see the total amount of what is measured. They're mostly indicators of the over 250 chemicals identified in oil and gas pollution. In addition, all these chemical mixtures mix together to form unknown compounds of unknown toxicity not currently measured. All right, the measuring station is even able to measure levels of pollutions of these pollutants below the standard they're at now. In addition, there are also no penalties under provincial law for exceeding pollution levels. While refinery pollution data record toxic levels of pollutants, no industry currently has to notify the downwind neighbors or the media, even if they know there is an excursion. As to EVRAS, the list of pollutants they have to report is quite different, mostly consisting of metals, and as I say, didn't have all the time to work on that. In addition to the known health effects of pollutants coming out of the stack, we know that several of these pollutants also cause and trigger chemical sensitivities. And I can tell you, if you want to try it out, just try out for a week living with the hell I'm living in, and perhaps you'll change your mind about how acceptable it is and how many people have been disabled. In the case of Marlene, she was disabled living in Glencairn and suffering from the plumes of this. The caveats, I understand, apparently that the buyer of lots within the 1,000 buffer of Ivraz and the refinery would have to have a caveat that would mostly not apply from what the developer said, because they seem to be mostly above this distance, but they would still be well within the distance that the plumes could affect them. It might make you feel real good because essentially if people know what they're getting into, it might prevent them from suing council or anybody else. But when I don't think it's if, but when people will develop health effects. And the biggest issue we have, again, is that our healthcare system does not recognize those things, so most people will show up at the hospital and they won't know what's going on with them.
Mr. Yurtash, you have 1 minute to go in the presentation.
I figured the wording of the caveats is also inadequate. The word emission does not look very bad, but if the words was toxic pollution, perhaps people would think twice about moving there. So in conclusion, the NPRI indicates astronomical levels of pollution. The levels of 4 measured toxins exceed air quality. These pollutants are not only smells, they are toxins that negatively affect human health, some of which have no known levels at which they are not active. There's no provincial requirement for polluting industries to notify downwind neighbors. The Saskatchewan Clean Air Act only requires testing for a few chemicals. The Poison Control Center does not seem to share their data on people who report to them. Saskatchewan medical professionals are poorly trained in recognizing and treating illnesses resulting from environmental poisoning. There's no support for this neighborhood from the Regina-Capel Health Region and the provincial ministries of health or environment, and there's no place in Regina for social discrimination by putting affordable housing within pollution plumes. Thank you very much. Please reject
Thank you for
this
your
development.
presentation. Are there any questions of the delegation? Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. Have you seen the letter from the province?
I haven't had time to read everything. It was a very long 260-some pages of things.
Okay. I'll read part of it for you.
It says, right to the question too, right?
Yes, that was the first question, but it will be based on the second question, or this part as well. It says it's based on the CCRL expansion project major hazard risk assessment report prepared by Marsh Risk Consulting, as well as complaints related to odor and residents with chemical sensitivities handled by the ministry, and that's what they made their decision on. Do you agree that's how they should make decisions, or do you think they should study it and make?
Well, I think at this point in time we know that some of these substances, for instance, hydrogen sulfide has been recognized as a cause of chemical sensitivity. I believe that the co-op and the Department of Environment have many, many complaints over the years from residents of mostly Glencairn. I don't know where the other places are, but from smells from the refinery. So I would think that they have to take these things into consideration before they make a decision, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. You can return to the gallery and we'll move forward with our next report. It's actually a communication from Jacqueline East. This is CP 13-11.
I'll move receive file.
Receive and file a seconder, please. Councillor Flagel, any questions on this or comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have you have another communication, 13-12. This is additional information about the report. Move it for that.
I'll move the clerk's recommended disposition of the
Seconder,
communication.
please.
Thank you.
Seconder? Okay. Councillor Fraser, any?
On process, please. Not sure how to handle this exactly. There is a lot of information in here. May I speak to this and ask questions on this? Or is this just a receiving?
If we actually had a comment by the administration, then some questions after Councillor Dowell?
Yeah.
So to the administration, Mr. Carlson, you want to lead us on this one? This is the amendments and additional information that would be considered as part of CP-39, which we would consider next.
Your Worship, I think I'll defer to Ms. Howerluck, the planning director, or Mr. Fenton.
Ms. Howerluck, do you want to lead us through this?
Through Your Worship, I just need to pull up technology. So just to be clear, you want to go through...
what's in the report.
Okay.
Just to summarize what is in the report.
Right. So tonight, Council is looking at amending the OCP to bring this property into the current phase of growth. It was designated to be residential development in the 2004 OCP amendments, so that is what we're considering tonight. The process going forward, should it be approved tonight, it would go to the Ministry of the Government for approval. So going through the application is looking at moving it to the current growth phase. Through the process, we did look at the risks that moving this development forward because of the concerns that were brought forward by CCRL, Ministry of Environment, and EVRAS. Those concerns that came forward, we also took into consideration the circulations that were moving forward. So through the process, we did look at all of the comments that came in, and we have concluded that the application is suitable for a residential development, as was noted in 2004 when it was looked at for residential development within the OCP. So moving forward, as we've said, it did go through the Regina Planning Commission in December. The Planning Commission did send the report back asking for additional information regarding the railway assessment, and that was brought forward to the Regina Planning Commission. Going through that, we also took into consideration the new information that was brought forward by the RM of Sherwood, and address that as the application would go through a concept plan amendment where we could address all of those concerns regarding buffering to their existing uses. When we were looking at the CCRL assessment, risk assessment, we did find that the report did indicate that the risks were low with respect to any major incident that could happen at CCRL. And then with the current upgrades that happened at the CCRL facility, it was determined that nuisances are going to actually be minimized through the new upgrades that have taken place. So in looking at the rail line buffer, that is something that we took into consideration. Obviously, there is railways that go through different neighborhoods, and mitigation measures will be undertaken through the concept plan to allow a buffer, to allow those uses to be compatible. Between 15 and 30 meters would be what we would be looking at, which is a standard throughout Canada. The FCM has asked that 15 meters would be a sufficient distance. So those uses and risks will be addressed during the concept plan phase of the project if it should move forward tonight. I could answer any other additional questions.
There may be a question if Councillor O'Donnell has some questions about this. Councillor O'Donnell?
I'm always concerned that people are only hearing words and don't have the document that I have in front of me. So first question is the document that came from the RM of Sherwood, which we looked at just before, is that posted on the website already? It is. Thank you for that. And this one that we're dealing with, which is a response from staff on some of those concerns, is it posted on the website now? Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I'm simply going to highlight a couple of things through question that Ms. Harlock asked. One, was this land for the last, looks like to me, 9 years clearly designated as residential?
Ms. Harlock?
Through the chair, it was identified as future residential.
Thanks. And in terms of joint planning, in terms of industrial development, which would occur in the peripheral of this area, was that handled in our normal fashion? And is that part of the normal planning that we would do with the RM?
Ms. Horlock?
Through the chair, we haven't done any specific joint planning with respect to heavy industrial with the RM on these lands north of this site. Okay,
thanks. And just so that we all understand about buffering, so there is a rail line that goes through this area, and I know that Ms. Harlock mentioned a couple of numbers. Could I ask for a little descriptor on that, please?
Ms. Harlock?
Clarification?
On buffering and rail lines,
sorry.
And what it means specific to this area.
Yes. So currently with the rail lines, 30 meters is what's recommended, but FCM did a study, and their recommendation is 15 meters.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Dell, thank you. Any other questions or clarification on this? This is a receive and file. Councillor Fraser, you have some questions? You want to go to the next report? this is a supplemental report for communication based on information we received from the Hour of Sherwood. Okay. If there's no other questions, on receive and file. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll now move to CR 13-39, supplemental report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Your Worship. So I think, first of all, this is a supplemental report to the Somerset Official Community Plan amendments, and I want to just explain why this is before Council, before I maybe even ask some questions or make comments. So the situation was this: back in, I want to say December, at Planning Commission, Somerset first came before us. At the time that it came before us, we were hearing much of the same information that you saw in terms of some general conceptual plans and all that kind of thing. And we heard from some of the delegations that you heard tonight in terms of support for the area. But we also then heard from CCRL, who was questioning the development. And also at that time, a letter appeared from the ministry. And no one had, from the proponents, had seen that. No one from Planning Commission had seen that. And if I remember correctly, at that time, only the staff had received that at that afternoon. So we were not fully aware, I'll call it full disclosure, of all the arguments that were going on here. So at that time, so that you understand, Planning Commission took a break and we sought some legal advice. Two, came back and asked administration to go back and look at a few areas of this plan. And you see now a supplemental report before you that asked for some further information. And I think rather than deal with them now, I'll deal with them as we go through the whole thing. But I just want you to understand why this is here. There is a lot of information that has been talked about here and previously, and I will leave it to Council if they wish to ask questions on this. Then on the whole report, I will make my comments for that.
Thank you for that, Councillor O'Donnell. Any comments on the supplemental report, which again is to provide more detail on the basis for the recommendations? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. To the main report, Councillor O'Donnell for report 40.
Well, thanks again. So this is Somerset Official Community Plan. So I'm going to go back to one of the questions I asked the delegation. First of all, I want you to understand where this is located. And I want you to understand that part of what I'm going to do here is give you the discussion that occurred on the floor of Planning Commission as best I can. One, Somerset is located just to the north and just to the east of what was Kensington. Is it Kensington Greens or Kensington? Kensington Greens, thanks. So Kensington Greens came before the floor of council about a year and a half ago, and we approved that. At that time, we never heard any delegations or any opposition from, for example, CCRL. Yet, much of this property is closer to the refinery than Somerset is. So that plan has been approved. So the next question was this always going to be a residential area? And you've heard now a few times that since about 2004, this always was a future development for residential. So when we started to look at an area, we started drawing circles. And it's one of your addendums on this one. You'll see circles. Some circles go from the fence corner. Some go from where the plant, the middle of the plant is, and trying to determine distance. There are no, as I understand it, no federal regulations, no provincial regulations that create a buffer. There is some understanding of what would be appropriate, but there are no regulations that tell us exactly how far something should be. So if you look at one of the circles, you'll note that it in fact goes through what is the commercial sector. And it is, in terms of Somerset, through a commercial sector. But if you look at some of the other developments, that is Uplands or Kensington Greens, in fact is within that residential. Those have already been approved. So then if you look up toward the housing portion, you'll note. So that's kind of one part of it. The second part of it is access. So over time, things have changed along Winnipeg Avenue. And so there's a lot of congestion. You know that staff are working on some of the access points or entrance points there, egress and so on there. So we started talking about how do we tie Kensington and in. So there's a road to the northwest proposed as well as a walkable area that's proposed. And as you heard from one of the proponents, it also could be an area where emergency vehicles could go. So it's wide, although it's not a road, but also that there is a desire to improve the conditions along Winnipeg Street. What I also want you to know is that the land immediately to the east of this development, is city land, City of Regina owned property. Am I correct on that? By the way, I should ask that question, but it is our land. Okay, so in other words, what would be planned there would be within our control. To the north of this, much like Hawkstone, there was to be some light or some kind of industrial area. The idea here, obviously, is if you live in an area, you have access to work close. If you wish to, work at the refinery or work in the Ross Industrial or go to North. So those are part of the discussions that occurred around here. I want you to also understand that we are not approving a concept plan. There are no streets, there are no buildings, there are no stores. We're simply looking at, is this a place where you want to have residents be? Now, I'm going to ask Your Worship to do one more thing before I sit down. I'm going to like to talk to the city solicitor. We get an awful lot of correspondence during the day, and I want to address one of the issues that was, I'm going to be very polite, flagrantly thrown out into one of the emails. So if you don't mind, a question or two to the city solicitor. Can I ask for you to explain that if council was to benefit from any development that would appear before us, what are the rules that govern that, please?
Mr. Weary?
Your Worship, members of council are governed by the provisions of the Cities Act as it relates to what's called pecuniary interest, and so all members of council are required to be alert to that, and if there is a matter that comes before committee or council that an individual member has a financial interest or a pecuniary interest, they are to identify that as part of the meeting, and they're to abstain from either discussing or voting on that matter. So these are legal requirements and legal obligations of all members of council, and they are contained in the Cities Act.
May I ask a follow-up question to that, please? Did council, this council and preceding council sign an oath to that effect before we began this office?
Mr. Weary?
That's correct, Your Worship. All members of council and the mayor are required to swear an oath of office as part of the swearing-in ceremony.
Appreciate that, Your Worship. I simply wanted to address that, and I will just at this point speak to myself. We sit at Planning Commission and we sit here to make decisions, and they are decisions for the community, not with any vested interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. We have other speakers on the report. Councillor Murray?
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask, and I know Councillor O'Donnell did touch a little bit on the lands that would be directly north of the CRL location, and that would be east of the subject property you're talking about. So now I appreciate that we own those lands. What's the future purpose of those lands? Do we have concept plans or ideas? Is it simply just land that we own?
Mr. Carlson?
Your Worship, east of the subject site, there's land in the RM of Sherwood, in which the city owns, and it's purely agricultural land right now, and there's no long-range plans of ours, though the RM may have the notion of some industrial in that area, but that hasn't been approved. And then there's city-owned land within the city limits, adjacent, somewhat southeast of the site, in which there's no long-range plans at this time either.
Okay, so we do have some land that sort of buffers in there the CRL operations, and I guess when I think back 80, 90 years ago, now I can't think that far back, but maybe there's a few folks out there. The CRL was way out of town. It was on the outskirts of town. That's great. It'll never be a problem. Never get in the way. Never be an issue. And Everaz or its predecessor, again, won't be an issue because it's way out of town. Well, guess what? We're growing, and we become hamstringed a little bit by some of this. But looking at this proposal and what we've seen before us, I see a great opportunity. It's an excellent opportunity. We heard from one delegate who gave us a whole bunch of the bad things that are out there, and I started thinking to myself about the people that I am surrounded by that still choose to use tobacco. We know it's not good for you. They still choose to drink and drive and eat fatty foods, text while they're behind the wheel. We all see people doing that. We know they're guilty. Maybe they use drugs. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing, but those are choices that they make. the reality is that we would be all better off if we were in a world that really was perfect, that our kids could not watch quite so much TV and maybe play outside a little bit. But those are all choices that we make. We make educated choices every day, and that's how we live our lives. The fact is that the proponents of this project have done a great job of putting together, in my opinion, a great development for us that's going to add value to our community. If people have a concern about where they live, they may choose to live someplace else. They might want to live in an older neighborhood downtown. They may want to live in a newer neighborhood, but they'll choose where they want to live if they're concerned about that. But the reality is this is up to us to provide at least the direction that, yes, they can use this land for residential. And that's really the question that's before us here tonight. And, Your Worship, I'm pretty content with what I've seen. I think it looks like a great project, and I think it'll add a lot of value to our community. So I'm definitely in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be supporting this. So this has been a long time coming for Ward 10, which I've been councillor of now for a while, off and on, of course. This all started probably back when I was on council back in 2007, 2008, and Kensington Green was going great guns until they realized that there was no water, no sewer, no fire hydrants available, and it was going to suck the water pressure down to like 10 psi. So the plan was to put a new pumping station and a pressure system in. So that's all coming, and so shall development. We look at Harbor Landing. It was supposed to run for another 5 or 6 years. It's down to 1 or 2. We had to open up another phase because of the growth of the city. Skyview in Councillor Hinks's ward is going strong. Hawkstone, another area in mine. They were just here last council meeting looking for more land so they could put up rental. And I guess that was one question I wanted to maybe ask the proponent. We can talk about that later on because this is just about adding this into our 235. And what about the rental aspect possibly? Kensington Green, again, like I said, they started back in 2002, 2003 or longer. And it's all about development and growth for our city. We're running out of places for infill in the inner cities and any other areas, the building and knocking down of buildings. We're just running out of land. There are still pockets, as Councillor Hinks has always talked about, but they're few and far between. And so when you get an opportunity to add something to a new development, to put it towards and look at what this can bring to the future of the Uplands people, the North people, access in and out, widening Winnipeg Street at some particular time. There's been talks and meetings, and it's going to be coming down in budget, having to redo Winnipeg Street overpass at Ring Road. It's going to create a better access into Winnipeg Street that a lot of the residents don't realize is coming, but it's coming down the line, and we have to address that in the next year or so. Those are a few things. One of the other things that was really big back in 2007 was the closing of schools. And yes, it was the public school board that was doing this, but why? Enrollment was down. This is going to be a possibility of 3,500 more students coming forward and allowing the opportunity to grow. There are other schools in the area for elementary, high school not so much, but the elementary schools will benefit from a lot of this. The health and safety aspect, I mean, Uplands has been there for over 50 years. Glencairn has been around for over 40 years. You know what? If there was an issue, I think it would have been addressed a long time ago. To add this into the 235 is absolutely the right choice, and I hope we can all support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I had mixed feelings on this proposal just because the need of housing that we have right now is a big concern for everybody in the city, but I also was concerned about the health risks for this area. But I took a good look at what the province was saying, how they based it on their opinion, how they based their opinion on complaints, as well as a document that was written not for this specific one, but for the upgrader expansion. And I thought that wasn't really a good way to base your opinion on complaints that you're getting, rather than looking into the real science of it. And then I looked at the Health Region's letter as well. And the Health Region talks about that no real studies have been done with the long-term effects on odors, noise, dust, and the like here as well. And they do say that using social determinants of health, all of these issues can negatively affect the health of the residents. But they also base it on the health ministry's letter as well. So I just didn't think that was a great way to base letters, especially when you're representing the province and the health region. So looking at the information that I have in front of me, I feel that this would be, it's not the risk that people, just based on complaints. So I don't agree with just going that way. So I think this is a development that we should look at doing and go ahead and support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Any other comments? Councillor Fraser?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to start by saying that I'm optimistic that someday this could be a great Regina neighborhood. But I'd also like to say I sit on Planning Commission. When I first saw this proposal, I actually had a lot of concerns. First off is the train line, but I realize that we have lots of train lines that go through the city, and we have proper process in place to make sure that houses aren't too close or that sort of thing, that trains aren't going to be waking anyone up in the middle of the night. So that's been sort of put to bed for me. Noise and smell from the industry close by, that was another concern that I think for the most part has been put to bed. We actually have data tracking complaints about this over the last few years, and while it's a nuisance for sure, I don't think it's so much of a nuisance that it necessarily would mean the whole neighborhood would be a bad place to live by any means. Risk of accident, that's certainly a big one with big industries like this, but given the nature of these industries and how they insure themselves, they have to keep good science on the risk of accident, and I think we've seen those reports that say that there's actually a very, very low risk as far as the refinery blowing up or something and this being a danger to people. So that's sort of been put to bed for me too. The only issue that really remains is about air quality, I guess. So I'm just wondering, do we have any knowledge of sort of air quality in that area? Is there anything existing?
Mr. Carlson?
Your Worship, I think I'd look to Ms. Howrlock or Mr. Fenton for the details around that.
Ms. Howrlock, you want to try that one?
Through you, Mr. Worship, we don't keep our own records, but the Ministry of Environment would have that information.
Given that this is a pretty significant development, and also given, as it was mentioned, that it'll probably be a year and a half before sewer is actually in that area of town, would it be possible for us to just try to put this one to bed too, to maybe try to gather some air quality information from that area? I mean, if the air is fine, then it's kind of good news for the development. It's good news for the people living there. It's good news for us. And if it's if there is real air quality concerns, then I think it would be prudent for us to know that.
That would likely be from the Ministry of Environment would have that information. They do the regulation and they can provide it to us.
Okay. So would it be possible to,
You want, as an undertaking or?
as an undertaking, to request that? To find out if it exists?
Mr. Carlson, you want to speak to that?
Your Worship is correct that it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Environment, so we could just obtain the information that they would have and as an undertaking provide that to Council.
Okay, so if I could ask if it exists for us to find it, and if it doesn't exist, for us to find out what it would take for us to collect that information.
That's a different question whether we want to task our administration for doing what the Ministry of Environment would do for regulations, but Mr. Carlson, you want to speak to that?
Yes, Your Worship. We are aware that the Ministry of Environment does regulate certain emissions, so that there would be some information available. We'll seek that from them, given that they're the responsible agency.
Okay, but I mean, they don't necessarily have a report on this particular piece of land, presumably, or?
Mr. Carlson, maybe I'll answer that one. Like they do have data on that. Mr. Carlson?
Your Worship, I think the best we could undertake at this point is to get the information that they would have available and start there with Council in terms of providing that. And if it's insufficient for Council's purposes, that we could pursue something above that.
Okay, great. So I'm just wondering what the process will be for that, but I'll come back to next. Or
I think the undertaking is that the administration, when it can, will bring back a report to let us know about that.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Other questions or comments? Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Worship. Living in Glencairn, I do have a little reservation on the development going. Reading through all the reports and all, living in Glencairn, I know that the plumes and downstream stuff, I get that. I know it's there. So I'm not sure if the uplands area through the wind direction, if that's going to affect too much of the Somerset. The question to Your Worship, to the administration, the fence line sensors that monitoring the air and air quality, or what's coming off of upgrader, where are they and how many do we have, to Your Worship? And what are they reporting on?
Mr. Carlson, you want to try that one?
Your Worship, I'm not aware, nor is my colleague, Mr. Wanzura, if the city actually has any
Actually, the city does not have those. Those are part of CCRL. They must provide those to the Ministry of Environment to measure pollutants that go in the air.
So that is a CCRL's. Okay. So my comment would be then again is that when some like this Somerset's going, there will be sensors set up that they monitor, and anyone can access that through the Ministry of Health and province. Looking at the again Somerset being built out for housing, type of housing, I can see that could be a good thing. The concern was the railway tracks being close by. Concern was the Winnipeg Street being congested. So I'm still not quite set on voting for that, but I'll sit down for a bit and then I'll think about this. But just to give you an idea of what, let's say, Marlene is dealing with, McFarlane is, she lives down the street from me, and so I get the same kind of downstream activities from upgrader she's talking about. But asking the Ministry of Health or the government on what's coming down that you call it I think it's a channel or a lane where you have the downstream for wind. With the residents of Somerset, I can see the benefits of the different housing. I can be convinced that that's going to be okay. So, Your Worship, I'm going to leave at that, and I'll do some more talking later.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor John, before you close debate, I want to have a comment there. Councillor Higgs, can you take the chair, please?
Your Worship, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Higgs. Just a couple of comments, and I first want to thank the delegations tonight. Again, for anybody who thinks that we don't have an interest of the citizens of Regina for what happens in our community, in our city, we see that's quite different. People are engaged in big issues in front of us, and this certainly is one of them. So I want to thank all the delegations, and I want to thank the proponent for their patience, and as we go forward developing another part of our community. I just want to have a quick comment related to some of the history related to this development, and I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Carlson. And this is related to the first time that we had identified this area as residential. The date, or the year, if we know when this was first identified. Future growth, of course, but it was identified as residential growth.
Your Worship, or Mr. Chairperson, to the Mayor, this was in 2004 with the development of the residential growth strategy, and it was at that time that this land was identified for residential development.
And as part of the residential growth strategy, was there public consultation involved? And if there was consultation involved, what did we receive back from area residents, from CCRL, AVRAS, other interest groups?
Your Worship, some of the consultation resulted in, if you look at one of the Appendix A1, there's a 1,000-meter buffer. Some of the consultation resulted in a buffer from EVRAS, but it didn't result in any other sort of separation distance from industrial lands. And of course, as a council-approved policy as part of the OCP, there was the normal consultation process, which resulted in council publicly adopting the growth strategy.
Was there any public concern about this being residential back in 2004?
Your Worship, we don't have record of that being any registered complaint against this being residential at that time.
I guess part of the reason that one of the benefits or lack thereof, I've been on council for 15 years, so I remember the debate, and there wasn't any concerns about that. It was actually a positive that there was residential development identified there, but there was note that it was getting close to CCRL and Avers, but there was not a criticism of that. I think we had an extraordinary amount of information and consultation on this project to date. And it really is simply an amendment to our concept plan, our community plan. So we don't have a concept plan yet. So we're very much in the high-level discussion here. And I'm satisfied, very much so, that the concerns have been expressed to date have been addressed both by the administration and I think even by those who came to Planning Commission that clarified the position. I understand the concern being close to industrial area, but let's wait and see what we have for the actual plan itself. We've heard some hints of that from the delegation about what it might look like, but we'll look about buffers, certainly with respect to the rail line and as it goes further north. This is fine. I'm comfortable with this. There are concerns, but no greater concern here than any other area that has been developed. And certainly, I believe that the expansion of CCRL, part of the task was to actually reduce the pollutants and noise. That was part of the mandate. Just to get a clarification and confirmation of that from the administration. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Who's going to have to? Mr. Carlson?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, to your worship, that is the case, and as Ms. Howard-Luck identified earlier, that some of the improvements and the upgrades actually resulted in improved conditions.
And so also as a final comment, there was a great deal of discussion, as there has to be for this kind of approach to go forward. Public consultation, we've heard it from CCRL, Avres, and from the RM of Sherwood. They have been part of the discussion from the very beginning, and they have stated their case in different ways to us. So I'm comfortable with this one, and I would hope that members of council will approve this, and we can go forward with another residential development that's needed in our community. Thank you. Councillor Donald will close debate.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to bring up a couple of points just to highlight them. One, you will recall that we had stalled development north of Argyle Park, and we had stalled development north of Uplands because of water, and Councillor Flegel referenced that. So the upgrades that we have invested in over on 9th Avenue North and Pasco Street were meant, with all of the piping and so on, were meant to allow those areas to grow. And I mentioned them both, Hawkstone and both Somerset and Kensington Greens, because they are of similar note in terms of how residential leading into light industrial. Second thing is reference has been made to the train and the tracks that go there. For the most part, those tracks carry a train that takes metal to Evraz Place. That's the material that is being hauled along there. And I also highlight the fact that at Planning Commission, first time under my sitting there, that we had actually a petition of 500 names asking to go ahead with the development. Planning Commission looks for concurrence. I will be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Our next report is CR 13-41. Councillor Donald.
This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment, 1902 Hasseltine Road, Parcel A, Riverbend. The area is Riverbend, and what this is that there's currently an urban holding over top of this particular piece of property, 1902, and it's simply asking to lift the urban holding and create an R1 residential so they can go ahead and build single detached homes. We look for concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Questions or comments on the report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Hinks for the bylaws, please.
I move, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that bylaws 2013-16, 17, 19, and 13 be introduced and read first time. Oh, or then 21, sorry.
21, yes.
Be introduced and read first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. For those present this evening, Council is considering 4 bylaws that required advertisement. They're Bylaw 2013-16, which is in relation to 1755 Hamilton Street. This is a zoning amendment to change it from its current zoning of downtown to contract. Bylaw 2013-17, which is for 1902 Hasseltine Road, is to change the zoning from urban holding to residential detached. Bylaw 2013-19 for 2370 Elphinstone Street is to change the zoning from public service to residential older neighborhood detached. And bylaw 2013-21 is the amendments to the Somerset official community plan, which was just discussed. If there's anybody present this evening that would like to further address council on any of those bylaws, please indicate your desire at this time. And I see no one, Your Worship, and I can also report there were no letters of objection on any of the bylaws.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. I'll call the question on the first reading once again because it should have been noted before. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Hinks.
I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that bylaws 2013-16, 17, 19, and 21 be read a second time.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Flagel, that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2013-16, 17, 19, and 21 going to a third reading at this meeting.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
I move, seconded by Councillor Fendira, that bylaws 2013-16, 17, 19, and 21 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. For those present this evening, Council is going to consider a report and a bylaw that also required public notice. It's in relation to the street closure of portion of 20th Avenue adjacent to 2875 Argyle Street and 2874 Elphinstone Street. So if there's anybody present that would like to address Council on the report or the bylaw, please indicate your desire at this time. And I see no one, Your Worship, and there was also no letters of objection.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councillor O'Donnell.
I'll just pick up on 1342, and as Madam Clerk said, an application for street lane closure, portion of 20th Avenue adjacent to 2875 Argyle Street and 2874 Elphinstone Street. This is simply the purposes of a closure is to provide the purchaser with additional land area. There is no impact on traffic flow or circulation, and there is a cost of $8,100 plus GST. Concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Any questions or comments on this report? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now the bylaw. Councillor Hinks.
I'll move 2013-20. It's already been explained. Okay. I move, seconded by Councillor Burnett, that bylaw 2013-20 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Young, that bylaw 2013-20 be read a second time.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Bryce, that Council hereby consents to bylaw 2013-20 going to a third reading at this meeting.
Any comments or questions at this stage? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
I move, seconded by Councillor Murray, that bylaw 2013-20 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move to delegation and related reports. The first report we had here with Mr. Elliott, and the debt limit is off the table, of course. So D13-42, Judith Verisek, and this is a Regina Downtown Business Improvement District. Please come forward, Ms. Verisek, and tell us who you represent. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards. And sorry we missed you for the first report.
My apologies for that. Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Good evening, Mayor Fougere and City Council. My name is Judith Verisek, Executive Director with the Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, and I am pleased to be here today on behalf of RDBID Board of Directors to present our proposed budget for 2013. The growth and opportunity in downtown Regina is unprecedented, and as such, the Board has endorsed an aggressive action plan for 2013. Our action plan focuses on encouraging both business and residential recruitment, as well as enhancement and beautification of the downtown neighborhood. Projects that were initially intended for completion in the longer term have been accelerated to support both public and private development in downtown Regina. Many of our projects are actions identified in the 2009 Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan. Our ongoing collaboration with City Administration is critical to the success of our downtown, and we have worked closely with key City departments on the pre-work needed for these projects. We look forward to seeing these projects come to fruition. I understand that you have received a copy of our detailed budget submission, and I will briefly highlight our plans for 2013. I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to our budget. A conclusion. Regina Downtown's budget is broken down into 4 pillars: member engagement and services, placemaking, business and residential attraction and retention, and transformational projects. Funding is also allocated to organizational management. Based on the 2013 to 2015 strategic plan that is currently in development, this budget is intended to efficiently use all our resources to provide sustainable benefit for downtown growth. Within the member engagement and services pillar, Regina Downtown will provide key services for members relating to maintaining the look and feel of downtown: marketing, promotions, public safety, and business support. Our 2013 initiatives include continuation of our Clean Team program, assistance and education with respect to graffiti removal, continuation of the Info on the Go program and the mobile visitor services kiosk, continued member outreach through the Downtown Dialogue series, member receptions, and social media efforts, production and distribution of downtown promotional materials, including the Artie Bid newsletter, maps, dining guides, annual report, strategic plan, and business recruitment material, and administration of general perception surveys. Within the placemaking pillar, Regina Downtown will support its members through the promotion, facilitation, and development of events and special initiatives. We will assist with initiatives being produced by others by providing communication support and acting as an information resource. Our 2013 initiatives include the continuation of our Cinema Under the Stars and Casino Regina concert series, expansion and enhancement of the City Square program year-round, continued implementation of the Regina Downtown signage plan, continued administration of the Urban Canvas mural program, development of the Downtown Public Art Guide, completion of the Regina Tornado Legacy Project, which entails the installation of murals and sculptures along the 1912 Tornado Path, collaboration with key partners to attract and generate new events to downtown, and coordinate with regional events to capitalize on potential spin-offs and to attract more people to our downtown. Within our business and residential attraction and retention pillar, Regina Downtown will strive to remain the primary source of information regarding downtown. We will support growth in all economic sectors and continue to inform our community about what's happening downtown. 2013 initiatives include the completion of the development of the Regina Downtown Housing Strategy, which will be informed by and coordinated with the city's comprehensive housing strategy, development of both a business and housing recruitment strategy along with supporting materials. Artie Bid, in conjunction with the City of Regina, is a partner in the Canadian Urban Institute study researching the value of investing in downtown. It is anticipated to be unveiled in Ottawa in June 2013. And we will be updating our Downtown Regina pedestrian count in May 2013, which will assist us in further business recruitment efforts. Within our transformational projects pillar, Regina Downtown will continue to advocate for downtown interests and to share its positions in a manner that shapes public dialogue and decision-making and inspires investment in downtown. To this end, Artie Bid is committed to working with the city administration on the programming and management strategy for City Square Plaza, FW Hill Mall, and Victoria Park, continued participation in the many committees and strategic alliances that share our goal of a first-class downtown, and will continue to support the City of Regina in the implementation of the Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan. Within our final pillar, organizational management, our goal is to operate an organization that is efficient, effective, and responsible to our downtown stakeholders by delivering programs and services that support our mission. Artie Bid will continue to invest in our team, property, and equipment, and we will continue to represent Downtown Regina at the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association, the Canadian Issues Task Force, the International Downtown Association, and all other external committees dedicated to revitalizing downtown. You will note that Artie Bid requests a mill rate in the amount of 0.7388 for 2013. This will create a surplus of approximately $62,754 in 2013, which will be directed into our unappropriated surplus reserve, 25%, and our capital reserve at 75%. Based upon our strategic goals and the number of capital projects, both private and public, that will be underway over the next 5 years, the Artie Bid Board has adopted a capital reserve savings plan. As projects such as the completion of the new stadium, the completion of the pedestrian overpass linking downtown with the warehouse district, and other anticipated capital improvements in downtown come to fruition, RDBID wants to ensure that we are an active partner in enhancing the downtown environment. The savings plan will allow RDBID to undertake capital projects in a timely manner. As you can see, the RDBID is committed to making downtown a place where people want to live, work, play, and invest. This action plan, while ambitious, is one that will position downtown for future growth and development, and we look forward to working with you to make it happen. In closing, our 2013 budget recommends that the mill rate be set at 0.7388 for 2013, and a provision for assessment appeals in the amount of $67,795 be allocated. We respectfully request that the revenue, expenditure, and transfers outlined in the 2013 budget submission are approved. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Varasik, for your presentation. Very thorough. Any questions? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thank you. Good evening. First comment, could you just verify that the downtown bid agrees to raise their property taxes to fund themselves? Is that what you're asking us?
Yes, that is. I'm sorry, through the chair to you.
Thank you. Yes. Second part of that is, within that, I'm assuming that not everybody agrees to the either amount or whatever, so you've built in a contingency fund should there be some challenges to that. Is that correct?
A contingency fund? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
For appeals.
For appeals, yes.
Okay.
The assessment appeal limit is recommended to us by the tax department of the city, and we've used their numbers.
Perfect. And also note that you have looked at the City Square as a year-round programming place. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We've had some tremendous success with the programming of the ice rink. Mind you, the weather really cooperated this year. But we've had over 80 people on weekends come out to skate. I've been there myself with my family. I thought it was a great initiative, and we look forward to expanding that program and doing some more work in what we would call the shoulder seasons, if you will.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other comments or questions? I have a couple of questions, Ms. Varasik, and thank you for answering questions. Just interested in the Regina Tornado Legacy Project. Where are the murals and sculptures located? I know that they were around downtown. Now they've been moved around. Can you give us an idea as to where they have gone?
We've installed 4 so far. There's one on the south wall of the Cornwall Street Parkade. That one is a mural, or an installation, if you will, in the shape of a tornado squiggle. One is on the north wall of the Sask Sport Building on Lorne. That one was done by Grant McLaughlin, and that one is a mural. There is a sculpture that was installed on the west side of Regina Center Crossing. That one was in the warehouse district. And then there was another sculpture that was installed, I believe, at 8th and Broad in the Pocket Park for the warehouse district. We have 10 other pieces that will be installed over this next year. We were a little delayed last year in terms of getting approvals from traffic in terms of where we were going to locate them, and now we're just waiting for the weather to break a little bit before we get started on those.
Good, thank you for that. One other question, and I know Councillor Flegel has some questions after. Your housing strategy that you're developing, can you just inform Council as to where you're at with that? I know you want to link it with the comprehensive housing strategy by the city, but where are you at with RDBID's strategy?
We're still early in the process. We've used the same consultant that the city has used, and they're working in tandem. So as they move forward with the city's overall comprehensive strategy, they're working on ours, but we're probably a little bit more delayed.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that. You okay, Councillor Flegel? Okay, any other questions? You can return to the gallery, Ms. Varasik, and thank you once again for your presentation. Councillor Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That as council representative on the bid board, gives me pleasure to move a motion tonight that council consider a recommendation by the Finance and Admin Committee that was approved on or recommended on February 12th. In particular, the recommendation is that City Council approve the 2013 Regina Downtown budget as detailed in Appendix A, along with the provision for estimated assessment appeals in the amount of $67,795. And two, that City Council approve the proposal or the proposed 2013 mill rate for Regina Downtown of 0.7388 mills.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Any questions or comments on the report? I'll just make one comment. I certainly support the good work being done by the RD bid. Councillor Down talked about a tax increase. What we have here actually is a bid levy. It's in addition to the commercial taxes they pay to the city. So this is a great investment by businesses downtown to help develop downtown, and it's over and above their property taxes. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we move on to other delegations. D 13-43, Kelly Haig. Mr. Haig, if you could identify yourself, who you represent. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions from members of council afterwards.
My name is Kelly Haig. I represent Logie Shoes, which I own down at 1843 Hamilton Street. Your Worship, City Councillors, the nature of my request has changed due to a decision you made tonight and an undertaking by the developer. So if I had a question by a councillor, I'd make a very brief comment.
Well, I'm sure we might be able to accommodate that. Councillor Hinks?
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
So we're very accommodating here. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor Hinks, through your mayor, your worship. The comments are, I'd like to thank City Council for approving the temporary parking lot on 1755 Hamilton Street, which allows the developer to have off-site parking for the construction of the proposed building across the street from us. I'd like to thank the developer for taking this undertaking initiative on their own, and even though it's going to affect us drastically, this will help quite a bit. So I'd like to thank the developer for that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And there may be questions of you from members of council. We'll see you're going up pretty easy tonight. Thank you very much. Oh, actually, we do have a question. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm glad to hear this has been resolved. Do you still expect this to have some impact on your business? And if you could speak in relation to the last development downtown, if you expect it to be much less, or?
Well, as I stated in my presentation, if we want a renewed downtown, new buildings and that kind of thing, we have to put up with disruption, and this will be very disruptive to my business. There was an avoidable factor, and that factor was having construction workers park off-street, and that has been resolved, so that will help. But yes, the disruption will be significant on my business.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. Our next delegation is D 13-44. Roseanne Hill Blaisdell, please. You identify yourself, who you represent, and I believe you have someone else with you. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
Thank you. Your Worship, members of City Council and members of City Administration, my name is Roseanne Hill Blaisdell. I'm the Managing Director of Harvard Buildings, Inc., Vice President of Leasing with Harvard Developments. And we are proponents of the discretionary use application before you today. With me at the podium is Mr. Vincent Dodds of Gibbs Gage Architects, who has acted as the lead design architect on the proposed Agriculture Place development. In addition to being the lead architect for the Mosaic Tower in Regina, Gibbs Gage has designed over 15 new office buildings comprising over 10 million square feet in the Calgary market over the past 5 years. They are partnering with the local Regina office of Stantec in this project. Michael Keim of MKT Arkle is the project manager of the building, and he has been involved in 6 of Harvard's downtown office developments, the most recent being Mosaic Tower, Hill Center 3. Harvard is proud and excited to introduce Agriculture Place. Located mid-block at 1842-1850 Hamilton, the building is proposed to be 147,000 square feet and approximately 10 stories in height. The new structure will be LEED certified and incorporate many materials and state-of-the-art mechanical and electrical equipment to ensure that Agriculture Place is a leader in environmental standards and energy efficiency. The building was envisioned in response to the public tender issued in 2010 by Farm Credit Canada to accommodate their need to consolidate their current offices and create efficiencies in their operations. Harvard was the successful proponent. The proposed development fulfills Farm Credit's needs and brings an additional 48,000 square feet of speculation, unleased space to the downtown market for any large block prospective tenants looking to locate or expand. The development is also consistent with the vision, principles, big moves, and urban design standards of the Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan. Agriculture Place has been sensitively and creatively designed to maintain the theme of the existing Farm Credit Canada Tower immediately north to this site. Over $69 million is being invested in the new building, and this will translate to a large number of jobs during the construction phase and bring hundreds of new workers into the downtown core. The economic benefit of such a project are multiple. Last fall, Harvard Developments, Inc. submitted this application and embarked on the urban design review process to ensure the building would meet the objectives and the spirit of the RDNP. The design of street-level building components reflects the requirement within the plan to provide active use at grade. The pedestrian interface is designed to accommodate commercial uses where the articulation of the building podium can easily allow for both large and small ground floor tenant sizes. The facade of the building at grade provides a good rhythm at street level to potentially accommodate several commercial uses with various entry points. Access to these commercial spaces is gained from street level, as well as potentially from the main building entrance, which punctuates the facade at mid-block location. The partially recessed parquet located below the +15 or pedestrian link provides both added barrier-free access to the adjacent retail space as well as a comfortable landscaped area, providing a pedestrian retreat along the active street edge. Together with added landscaping and improved sidewalk treatment along Hamilton Street, the overall podium design of Agriculture Place intends to engage the urban realm and add to the vibrancy of Regina's central business district. In terms of the aesthetics of the building, the material treatment and articulation at the base reflects the small-scale rhythm of massing required in the RDMP. Clear glazing around the base of the building creates improved depth and views into the building, while patterned glass adds to the animation of the streetscape. Additionally, rich quartzite and granite stone materials act to ground the frames and accent the facade. The proposed building is also wrapped with large glass canopies that extend out 1.5 meters from the face of the building. The canopies provide weather protection as well as a design feature to partially deflect wind that may be driven down the face of the building and reflect a human scale. To substantiate the comfort of the wind conditions at the street level, we engaged a consultant, Rowan Williams Davies and Irwin Inc., to evaluate the proposed building massing and configuration. Based on a thorough wind tunnel analysis completed for the recently constructed adjacent Hill Tower 3, the analysis revealed that the design of the building would not create negative conditions at grade for pedestrians, and that areas along Hamilton Street edge would be comfortable for standing and other pedestrian activities throughout the year. In terms of the office contribution gradient, We have agreed on a value of $517,626 in public amenity contributions. This gives priority to the pedestrian realm development, including landscaping, street furniture, and a mini parkette. We are in the final stages of negotiating an agreement on a number of these items. We anticipate that the completion of this portion of the urban design review will be done in advance of the development permit being issued. This is consistent with the objectives of the Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan to generate vibrant and active streetscapes in downtown. The required building parking to meet bylaw is 137 stalls. This application meets this requirement by providing 2 underground parking levels, providing additional 62 parking stalls on site. Access to the parking garage is from the lane at the rear of the subject property and shared with the existing FCC building parking ramp. 75 parking stalls provide the remaining parking required in an existing parkade located at the northwest corner of Rose Street and 12th Avenue, located 1 block east of the subject property through a parking agreement with the city. Off-site parking is a permitted use in the downtown zone. In response to concerns voiced about contractor parking on Hamilton Street during the course of construction of Agriculture Place, we have contacted the owner of 1755 Hamilton Street and have agreed to enter into a contractual arrangement to use their parking stalls for the purpose of contractor and sub-trade parking. Please see the attached letter. Harvard Developments, Inc. currently manages 1,283 number parking stalls in the downtown core, with 781 stalls being required through leases of our tenants. A few of the larger tenants in the buildings are also high users of public transportation, and with a huge emphasis on the city's new Walk to Work campaign, we are confident there will be no additional pressure on parking as a result. In closing, Harvard would like to emphasize our commitment to downtown Regina. We have operated our head office in this city for 110 years this year and have a strong history of investing time, dollars, and people right here. We intend to continue this legacy of improving and supporting many projects and activities which make Regina's downtown a jewel in the prairies. We are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and there are indeed some questions. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Your Worship. Good evening. Thanks for taking some questions. Let's first talk about the downtown plan and your experience now a couple of times in terms of building. How do you feel now about the plan and how it's helped you or not helped you?
I think that the plan has very good merit, and certainly the process that we went through this go around the second time, through the chair, was a positive process, and that the resulting design has benefited from the process, and I believe that there is some evolution in the process and the collaboration that we undertook with the city, and that was appreciated.
Oh, good, thanks. So there is a building beside this one, FCC, and really is this not just an extension of that building? Was this kind of planned sort of a long time ago?
Through the chair. Absolutely. Farm Credit was moved to Regina in the early 90s, and this building was built to accommodate their move from Ottawa. It was a very positive thing for the city and brought many, many hundreds of people to the city. Today they provide 765 jobs in downtown Regina. And this building had an annex designed which in the future contemplated a small pencil tower. At that time, a floor plate of 6,000 square feet may have been an appropriate addition to the existing tower. The structure certainly is in place there for this tower, and we have utilized that in the design. But in today's world, a functional floor plate requires more of the 10 to 15,000 square foot range, and so we enhanced what was there.
Good. So I want to pick up on that thought. So let's start from the very ground or underground. There is an existing underground parkade, as I understand it, and you're going to add to that underground parkade. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there already are how many existing parking stalls and how many more will there be?
In the existing,
Yeah.
do you have that off the top of your head? No. Okay. There are, we've been, through the chair, we've been through many calculations, so I don't have the exact number, but it is in the 50 or 60 range, and I will get that number to you if you require.
62 in your report.
62 are the additional ones.
Okay.
The additional ones, but the existing ones under the existing farm credit tower is around 60.
Okay, that's good. I'll come back to parking and so on in a minute, but let's move up now a little bit. On the main level, are the two buildings attached as well?
They are.
Good.
Through the chair.
And then I also note in the report, if I go up a few stories, there's also another attachment. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
So in the new tower that goes up, is it all farm credit?
Through the chair, no, it's not all farm credit. It accommodates their entire requirement for consolidation and provides some extra for large block potential.
I gotcha. So I was thinking of the consolidation based on our discussion at Planning Commission. So if I recall, and if you would just verify, there are a number of other, I guess, satellite offices that FCC is doing, and they're now allowed to bring all these people under one area. Is that correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Perfect. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. And now, if we again go back down to the Main Street level, tell me what it would probably be like as I walk down the street. What kind of operations would occur at that ground floor level?
I will defer that to my esteemed colleague.
Through the chair, the intent of the grade level uses for the new facility are in line with the RDMP, and that focuses primarily on small-scale retail and commercial uses. There is a small lobby that will be added primarily to the focus to have a lobby to the elevator core of the second tower, but the balance of all the remaining spaces along the main floor, including some of the areas that are in the annex, which are currently office use, will be converted into retail to support the downtown plan.
Okay. Was part of the consideration with the downtown plan adding a little bit more on that ground level to the south side, as I recall?
Through the chair, that's correct. There's a smaller annex building that was added, and the scale of it is only 1 story to the south portion of the plan. That does include a 1-story retail dedicated or commercial dedicated space as part of this application.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's go back to parking a little bit. So obviously, I think you heard some of the discussion that we had at planning, and you reacted, and I will comment about that later. But in this building, you are adding new parking stalls.
Through the chair, correct.
And what I heard was that by consolidating, there are already people working in the downtown who will be moving in this building. So would I be wrong if I said there's a net gain of parking here?
Through the chair, you wouldn't be wrong.
Okay. And I think you heard the complaints about the construction which affected folks, and you have an arrangement, if you would just describe that a little bit, to the 1755.
Through the chair, given the time that we had to deal with this, we have an agreement in principle and in writing that we will be entering into a contract for the entire duration of the construction period, and that we will be purchasing through the development process monthly stalls for the entire period of time at market rates.
Okay. So to just close that gap, so we're going to hopefully start construction when and finish when, please?
Through the chair, our construction start date is planned for this summer, late summer, and we anticipate occupation of the tenant, or tenants hopefully, by July 2015.
Okay, so the 2-year period.
Correct.
And the last thing I want to just ask about and give you a chance to comment is about the public realm and some of the things that you considered and are obviously still in negotiating. I know that we talked about a parquet, we've talked about trees and so on. And I get you just to talk about, first of all, that process and any benefit you see from that.
Through the chair, and I will ask Vince to say a few words as well, but the process helps the developer and us in this particular circumstance to look closely at how our project really improves the streetscape and enhances the corridor of Hamilton Street. Of course, there are areas that we may disagree on still, but I would say that overall this has been so far a fairly good process, and Vince has been involved, and I wouldn't mind him saying a few words as well.
Please.
Through the chair, in response to the question that was raised, we as architects who have worked in quite a few municipalities in Western Canada have really appreciated the role and the intent of the upgrades to the urban planning portion through the bonus calculation that's going on with the current RDMP, and primarily because it encourages the developers at the time to obviously invest in those upgrades to the benefit of both the project that they're working on, but also to obviously the immediate public realm around it and the urban improvements that are created. We have been exposed to similar type of levies in other municipalities which funds are collected by the municipality, but never really quite focused on where they were being placed, or in some cases are still remaining outstanding. So obviously the benefit, and I think the real urban benefit to the city in this case, is that not only will they be felt, but they will be immediately received and benefited during construction of this process.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through the chair, I'd like to thank the delegation for their presentation. Being a lifelong resident here, it's very exciting to see these new projects move forward. I have a bit of a general question that leads on, but Harvard being a developer in both other cities and this new growth spurt for Regina, how would you describe Regina in terms of being business friendly in terms of a major development like this? And you've just completed Hill Tower 3. Are there some lessons we could learn now that this is your second building going up? I think it was about 30 years you had mentioned, I think, at the opening of Hill 3. So are there areas that we could look at from a city in terms of being more supportive?
Through the chair, certainly it was 20 years from the last construction of a high-rise building to Mosaic Tower, and it was on many fronts a new learning experience for many of the trades in the area. Labor was a challenge on that project, and parking was a challenge, but I think parking overall downtown is a challenge that developers and other municipal stakeholders could perhaps look at in a more cumulative way, and that we as a city could improve in that area for sure. But in terms of business friendliness, the city has been great to work with, and the province has been great to work with, and we feel that the businesses here have embraced the new developments, and everybody, for the most part, is pretty excited about it.
Great. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I'd like to start by saying I think this is an exciting, be a good addition to downtown. Just a couple parking-related questions, of course. I'd also like to compliment you on your proactive response to the on-street concerns at planning the other day, as far as renting out this lot. Just wondering if you have a contingency plan, because the Hamilton lot, as you know, is only under a 3-year. We've sort of allowed it for 3 years, and it was I think it was told us that the intent was to develop it, not necessarily even after 3 years, but they're looking for an opportunity to develop that land ASAP. So I'm just wondering if you might have a contingency plan should that lot cease to be.
Through the chair, the developer has committed to us that we can contractually have the stalls for the entire period of the construction project. And I know that there are wishes to develop the land, and we have acknowledged those wishes and perhaps might even help them work something out in the long run on that front.
Okay. And that's to presume that your timeline is within 3 years to have this finished?
Through the chair, this project will be finished by the summer of July 2014.
Okay.
2015.
2015. Okay. Through the chair, you're quick. Good for you. And one last question. I'm the councillor for downtown. I've heard a lot of concerns about the back alley access too. I think that was a problem for some of the businesses both on Hamilton and on Scar Street. So I'm just wondering if you've had contact with any of those people, or if you have any sort of plans in place to help alleviate access to the back alley during construction. Thanks.
Through the chair, our tenants need to have access to that back alley, and that is for both Mosaic Tower and the existing Farm Credit Tower. And so it is in our best interest and the contractor's best interest, and we will enforce that with the contractor, that access is a priority, save and except the short periods of time which might occur for utility work and that sort of thing.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. Talking about parking being a concern, you're providing 62 stalls on site with 2 levels of parking. Did you ever consider doing 3 levels of parking instead of having 75 of them go off site?
Through the chair. It certainly is an analysis that we have looked at. The cost of going down another level is in the millions of dollars. And so the economies are very challenging to create not too many incremental additional stalls. And so we did go through an analysis and a thought process on that, and felt the 62 was where we would position this property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. No other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation and answering questions. We appreciate it. You can return to the gallery, and we'll move on to our next delegation. So Judith Verisic. Once again, tell us who you represent, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
Thank you. Much like Mr. Haig, I will amend what I'm saying based on some of the developments that had occurred regarding the parking. So, again, my name is Judith Verisic, Executive Director with the Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, and I'm pleased to be here today to provide support for the discretionary use application 12DU34. Regina Downtown Business Improvement District offers general support for the proposed development for helping to address the pressing current need for A-class office space in downtown Regina, the provision of high-quality, at-grade retail space in an important retail area of downtown, and the proponents' demonstrated continuing commitment to a vital and vibrant downtown. The applicant is to be commended for its work in these regards. Regina Downtown strongly encourages the proponent to make every effort to ensure compliance with the Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan, for which the Regina Downtown bid has expressed its full support. And with that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Versick. Any questions? Right on. You can return to the gallery, and we'll now consider the report 45. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Your Worship. On behalf of the Planning Commission, I'm very pleased to bring forward an application for a discretionary use, proposed office building greater than 2.0 in the downtown zone, 1800, 1842, and 1850 Hamilton Street. There are a number of recommendations in here, and I just simply will highlight a couple. So a development permit can be issued for the above noted building and the above noted addresses. And the development plans must be consistent with those that we have seen in our presentation and that are posted online. I'm going to stop here for a second and tell you that in my time on Planning Commission, the first words out of one of the commissioners' mouths were, "This is a really nice building." I can tell you that after many planning commissions, we have huddled and said, those were not that nice of buildings. So I note that, and I compliment the people, and they need to hear that once in a while. You will also note in the beginning that we asked and had the same discussion at planning about the downtown plan, and if you note that both the delegations said that the downtown plan and how that works has helped, and I think it did in this building. The two buildings are tied nicely together. You also note that we talked an awful lot about parking. The story there is that I believe that the proponent sat and listened to an elongated discussion on parking, and within one day I had a letter copied to me that said they had made arrangements for parking. The area at 1755 Hamilton could have been a questionable area in terms of public debate, but I think that you note that both the downtown bid and the other area businesses have all supported this as a short-term solution. And I tried to point out to all of you that the people who are owning the land at 1755 are looking at and I use this phrase on purpose, multi-use facility that could be going in there. Building permit requires a minimum of parking stalls for people with disabilities. This is covered. You also note from the discussion and questions that there is a public realm here. The total amount of money is over $517,000. And while there's not an agreement on that, you note that there are some things in the plans that we have seen in a general sense from a parkette and trees and so on that should help this area considerably. I think this is a very exciting plan. I compliment the proponent for both handling the parking right away and bringing us a beautiful building. We look for concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other comments on this? I have a quick comment if no one else is speaking. Councillor Hinks, can you take the chair, please?
You ever lift some weights?
Thank you, Councillor Hinks. Just a quick comment. Obviously very excited to see this development go forward, and I want to reiterate the thanks to the developer to solve a problem that has been systemic in downtown development. That's a parking space. A very creative way to do that. So, I think on behalf of City Council, thank you to Roseanne Hill-Blaisdell for the work you've done to make that happen. I think that's quite important. But I want to speak just on one element of this development, and clearly it meets our downtown development plan. It is a great example of how businesses understand what we're trying to do. They've translated what we want in our downtown development plan to ensure we have the buildings that meet our objectives. But the $517,000 investment in the public realm is still a unique process to go through for downtown, and it works. And we're going to see the public realm for pedestrians, see a great deal of amenities to be negotiated. Notwithstanding that, it's going to be great for our downtown, and I just wanted to reiterate the support that I have for this. I know members of council will be supporting this too. On behalf of council, thank you for the work you've done. Look forward to seeing this building going up. It is the second tower going up in a short order, and hopefully we'll see more of them for downtown. But this is a beautiful building. It will be a great addition to downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah.
Councillor Down, do you want to close debate? Okay, I'm going to call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move to executive committee reports. Councillor Hinks.
Yeah, I'll move CR 13-46. This is a semi-annual review of closed items, and the recommendation is the report be received and filed.
Received and filed the report. Any questions or comments on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Hinks.
I'll move CR 13-47. This is to do with the 101st Grey Cup Festival, November 20th to 24th in 2013. The recommendation is, I'll read what it's, that the executive committee approve the total City of Regina costs of $1,021,000 to support the 2013 Grey Cup Festival and the championship game. And then the things are listed there. And then the second thing is that the executive committee approves the funding for B&C above in the amount of $865,100 to be allocated from the General Reserve Fund. And 3, that the executive committee direct administration to negotiate with the Saskatchewan Rough Rider Football Club the recovery of all or a portion of the total unfunded costs of $865,100 associated with the event. And number 4, that the executive committee to grant authority to the city manager to execute an agreement on cost recovery between the City of Regina and the Saskatchewan Rough Rider Football Club.
Thank you, Councillor Hinks. Comments? Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is premature, but I just wanted to know through you, Your Worship, if any discussions have happened with the Saskatchewan Rough Rider Club and what those discussions are, if we are able to hear them.
Mr. Davies?
Mr. Mayor, through you, to date, no formal discussions. We do have a festival or a committee meeting in the next couple of weeks. I'll be broaching the subject at that time and then entering into some formal discussions thereafter, and I'll report back to Executive Committee.
Thank you. I strongly feel that with the Grey Cup making money, that should go to pay this off first before anything else. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Councillor Bryce, other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Bryce?
Do a little dance first.
If you want to. Sure.
Bring forward CR 13-48, which is the 2013 Flow Monitoring Program and Wastewater Model Calibration. And this is before us today because of the dollar amount. It's $500,000. And this is for City Council to authorize the Deputy City Manager of Operations to initiate the process to engage consulting and professional engineering services for the 2013 Flow Monitoring Program and Wastewater Model Calibration. The contract exceeds, as I said, $500,000. That's why it's here. City Council authorizes the Deputy City Manager of Operations the authority to award, finalize the terms for the consulting contract.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. This is an important report because it does deal with wastewater and flooding and our ability to deal with flooding throughout the city, so it's quite a significant investment to improve that portion of our city. Any comments or questions on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move to report 49. Councillor Hinks.
I'll move CR 13-49. It's amendments to the bylaw, the Regina Regional Opportunities Commission bylaw.
Okay. Any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for the administration about part of the report asks for them to be able to set, for the Regional Economic Opportunity Commission to be able to set their own quorum for committees. I'm just wondering, do we have any sense of, what that quorum might be?
I can't sit on this. I do sit on the commission,
Okay.
so I can just tell you it's finding a way to get work done. So 50% plus 1 is just clarifying and codifying it. So it really is just a housekeeping issue to make sure they can get work done.
Okay, sure. So it's 50% one for the board, but subcommittees, they're going to set their own quorum? I'm just curious.
They are set the same way.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions on the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Hinks on report 50.
I'll move CR 13-50. This is penny discontinuance policy and changes to the administration bylaw number 2003-69.
Okay, any comments or questions on this report? I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have 3 bylaws, 2 of which are beginning to end, and then the third one will be on third reading only. Councillor Hinks.
I move, seconded by Councillor Fraser, that bylaws 2013-22 and 2013-25 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that bylaws 2013-22 and 2013-25 be read a second time.
Any questions on the report and the bylaws? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Flegel, that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2013-22 and 2013-25 going to a third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
I move, seconded by Councillor Findira, that bylaws 2013-22 and 2013-25 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have our third reading for bylaw 13-7.
I move, seconded by Councillor Burnett, that bylaws 2013-7 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to adjourn.
I'll move adjournment.
Seconder? Councillor Flegel, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good evening.
Were you, I've tried ever since we've had these things to be able to get a charger down here. I told him today to buy one on my budget, whatever. IT that I told why can't who's the new person up there right now? Ashley, I told her that, or no. Anyways, I had conversations with a bunch of people this morning because I did it a year ago, I did it 6 months ago, I did it now. I can't see that a simple thing like a charger.
The concern is this, is that we don't want to keep buying them. So there's no way for us to wire those in. So either council has to remember to keep them in their desk.
That's what I meant.
Or to bring it to every meeting.
Yeah, but like I'm not going to bring it to every meeting.
Yeah, that's what we mean. So if it goes.
But if I kept one on my desk right here.
Yeah.
Because I know lots of people have been in trouble at the end of meetings that they're going on.